The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
Hello, and welcome to Mental Health Matters. I'm your host, Courtney Gedeon, and today we are talking about managing mental health through a major health challenge. Receiving news such as a cancer diagnosis or finding out you need open heart surgery can have life-changing effects. Emotional health of patients, families, and caregivers need to be taken into consideration. Common feelings during these major life experiences include anxiety, distress, and depression. Roles at home, school, and work can be affected. Cancer, for example, affects your physical health and can bring up a wide range of feelings you might not used to be dealing with. Here to talk about managing mental health through a cancer diagnosis and treatment is my guest, Stephanie Leipold. Stephanie, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So I just want to talk a little bit because you had been diagnosed with cancer, and your journey hasn't necessarily been an easy one. So you were diagnosed at a young age, and so can you tell us what was going on at that time? What age were you diagnosed at, and how did it affect your mental health?
I was 36 years old. I kind of just felt tired. Kept telling my doctor I was tired, and then he kept telling me, it's fine, you're busy, you're working. And I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure it's not working. It's just something else. And then I just started getting more tired. And then the more he didn't listen, the more upset I got until I found a lump in my armpit. And then he's like, oh, something might be wrong. And then from there, it just went to testing and testing and testing. They told me I didn't have cancer. 2 days later, they told me I did have cancer.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So
how did that affect you?
It's a lot of feelings of depression and then anxiety because you don't know what's going to happen. So my mom died when I was 25 from the same cancer.
Wow.
So right away you think the worst, right?
Yes.
And then when it turns out not to be that bad, like it's bad, it was stage 2 cancer, you just realize that, life has a lot to do with how you overcome everything, like your friends, your family, your outlook on the whole thing also.
Right, exactly. And I think from the outside looking in, to people who may have not had that before, they think, oh, it's cancer, so it's a physical battle.
Yeah.
But it's not just physical, is it?
No.
So what kind of, you said anxiety, depression, what were you, like, how was that feeling for you at the time? What were you going through?
Well, you wonder, are you dying right now, right? And then every day after that diagnosis, you're wondering, okay, well, how bad is it? Is it somewhere else? Is it this? Is it that? Am I going to have surgery again? Am I going to have chemo again? Radiation again? Like, all of those feelings come into play over and over, and then you're upset about it because now every day is not the way it used to be. Like, one day changed your life forever.
Yeah.
And it always goes back to that day, right? Like, if you don't feel good, you're like, oh my God, is it here again? Or everything like that. Like, you have no idea about anything about that.
Right.
But it's always anxiety every day.
Wow.
And then the depression that your life has changed, right? And then before that, you don't look at your life like that. You look at your life like, I'm 36, my life is all ahead of me and nothing's ever gonna happen. And then when it happens, you realize that it's not the rest of your life ahead of you. You have life ahead of you, but you never know when it's not going to be there.
And so you say it's life-changing. Of course it is. Was there a specific way that your life changed at that time?
You say you have friends, right? People tell you all the time, yep, I'm your friend. As soon as you're diagnosed with something like that, they look at you like you're transparent. They're afraid to talk to you because they don't know what to say.
Right.
You're still the same person you were before. It's just everything in life changes. Like, physically you've changed because you've had surgeries, and then mentally you've changed because you've had such a diagnosis, and they take their lives for granted, and it's the life that someone's praying for, right?
Yes, exactly. So I've heard people in my life before say, oh, I haven't reached out to that person because I don't know what to say, whether it's something like this, whether their parent has died, whether something, big and catastrophic happens, they stop reaching out because they don't know what to say. What would you say to those people?
We're still the same people we were before. Like, we still get up every day, we still do everything that we did before. Well, most of us do everything we did before, some of us can't. But we're still the same people inside. Like, and we need you more now than we did before. Because
Right.
before, we were mentally stable and everything was perfect.
Yes.
And then now it's not perfect. Everything's changed.
Right. I would imagine that it could feel quite isolating because you're going through all of this. Certain people in your life don't seem to be around anymore. And I've actually read that when you go through a cancer diagnosis, it can be quite isolating. Is that how you found it to be?
I had a really good psychiatrist, so
Okay.
that helped a lot. She did therapy as well as psychiatry, so that helped a lot. She moved away last year, so I've been untreated mental health-wise, so that's not been great, but it's something that we have to deal with, and because of COVID, it's happened to a lot of people. Other than that, it's people should reach out, and they just don't.
Yeah.
They need to understand that we can't reach out to everybody else because we're one person and going through so much. They're one person and going through their life, but it should be up to them, like, to make a little bit extra effort.
Yes, exactly. So when you were going through these hard times, I know you mentioned that you had a psychiatrist that was helping you. Were there other things that brought joy into your life? Any hobbies, anything like that?
Yeah, my dogs. My
Okay.
dogs. I have a lot of dogs, and they bring, like, comic relief to your life. You realize that, their lives are short and their time here is short. So you just look at them and realize that they're so quick at letting things go and moving on in life, even if, they've had trouble in their own sickness even, or having babies, whatever. They just take it with a grain of salt and away they go.
Right.
They don't hold any grudges of anything. They just keep going.
Yeah, exactly. And does it put things into perspective when you go through something like this? You see the world through a different lens. Does it change the way you see everything?
Well, when I lost my mom when I was 25 from the same illness I have now, I realized that life was short then. And I never took pictures with my mom. So the biggest thing in life is take the pictures. You want to eat the cake, eat the cake.
Right.
They tell you to do a special diet. I never did. Like, that might work against me, but I'm enjoying my life for what I have left, right?
Yes.
And then now being terminal, it's more than it was before.
Right.
So, like, I have a list. I made a bucket list of, like, things I wanted to do. So I've slowly been checking everything off that list,
I
even
think
if it's
that's
something
amazing.
small.
That's great, Stephanie.
Yeah.
We do have to go to commercial break. We will be bringing you back more Mental Health Matters when we return. Welcome back to Mental Health Matters. I'm your host, Courtney Gedeon, and today we are talking about managing mental health during a life-changing health diagnosis. Here to share his story and answer some of our questions surrounding mental health is none other than social worker Gary Derenfeld. Gary, welcome back to the show.
What a treat to be with you again.
It's such a pleasure to have you here. You're one of my favorite guests. Every season I have to have you on.
Thank you.
And I was worried that that might not happen this season with everything you've been going through. So
Yeah.
can you tell the people at home a little bit, what did you just go through?
Yeah, there was a close call. I was diagnosed with coronary heart disease in April, May.
Okay.
And it turns out I was scheduled for a triple bypass that turned into a quadruple bypass.
Yeah.
So I am here having survived open heart surgery about 10 weeks ago.
Yes, yes. And I followed your story very closely. The day that you went into surgery, I think you had, most of York Region holding their breath. I'm so glad that it worked out for you, but I'm interested to understand mentally what you went through because, again, you're going through a big physical surgery. Mentally, what does that do?
Courtney, I was terrified.
Yeah.
I didn't know if I was going to survive. The survival rate from the surgery is actually quite high, but I was at risk of the, what they would call the widowmaker, that one heart attack that would take you out of the game.
Yes.
Because I had some significant blockages. So to say terrified is an understatement. I want to stick away from mental health words and just use emotions.
Okay.
There is tremendous fear. What's going to be? Will I survive? And in surviving, what will survival look like? There is sadness. This doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
I worry for my wife, whom I love dearly, surviving me if I don't survive. There is ambiguity and uncertainty, which, as people, we all have difficulty with.
Yes.
What is recovery going to look like, and how am I going to manage through recovery? So fear, sadness, uncertainty are and being terrified, the major feelings that I went through, not uncommon for many people.
Those feel like very uncomfortable feelings.
Horribly uncomfortable.
Yes.
And you know me, you follow me on Facebook. I chose to be quite transparent about this entire journey and my feelings,
Yes.
what I was going through, so that people could kind of look behind the mirror or behind the curtain, so to speak, to normalize an awful journey.
Right.
And that's what I did. That's what I went through.
Yeah. So you had your wife, Arlene, who
Yes.
we've all gotten to know through Facebook, I think.
She's wonderful.
She is wonderful.
I get emotional thinking about it.
Yes. Well, let's talk about how important it is for people who are going through something like you went through to have that support. We talked a little bit with Stephanie about the friends and how some people would distance themselves. Did you experience any of that? And what was the most helpful part of your support group, I guess?
Well, the first thing I would say to people is don't run away from others. Make yourself accessible. Be transparent. Be authentic. Be open. It's hard for others to provide support to you if they don't know what you're going through.
Right.
Okay, so that was one of my key messages in all of my writing and posting on Facebook. And with that, I was able to garner a lot of support. And honestly, it made a huge difference in my recovery. People were there with people that I didn't even know. Were dropping off food. Were offering messages of support, love, care. And a big proponent of that, of course, my wife and extended kin. Another message that I gave frequently is to show gratitude to those who are offering you support. With respect to what Stephanie had to say, many people don't know how. And so as you express your gratitude, it allows them in a little further, and it suggests to them that what they were doing was actually helpful.
Right.
So this is where, despite our fear, sadness, uncertainty, we still have to be mindful of those trying to help us and to be kind and generous and grateful to them.
Did your wife ever express any challenges that she was going through? I mean, of course she was going through challenges, or was she just keeping it all in because you were the patient? How did that work?
She is a person who tends to keep her emotional cards closer to her chest.
Okay.
And so, sitting on a couch together, I just turn to her and say, what's going on for you? And that created a safe space for her to enter and to share some of her feelings, which were really mirroring mine.
Right.
So with that, we were able to talk, hug, cry,
Yeah.
and hold each other.
Yeah. Well, I really like what that message says. It says, I'm going through this horrible challenge. I may not be my best self, but it's still within my power on how I treat others.
Yes. Yeah, I take a view that we're still always responsible for ourselves, regardless of what we're going through. We can't use our discomfort with all those big feelings. We can't use that as permission to be ornery, disrespectful, or mean-spirited to others. Rather than going to that place as a means of expelling those bad feelings, just talk about those feelings.
Right, yes.
Just put them out there, own them, and acknowledge them.
Right, exactly. So there's different stages, I feel, when something like this comes up. There's the diagnosis, the treatment, and recovery. Do they all have their own different challenges when it comes to our mental health?
Oh, yeah. Diagnosis, you're in abject shock. I had so many clinicians come within 2 inches of my face.
Yes.
Do not go for those walks anymore. If you feel pain, call 911. And like, everyone wanted to impress upon me how seriously ill I was because I didn't feel it per se.
Yes.
You know, this is kind of a silent disease. So abject shock initially, then you settle in with that. And there's a process of learning about the diagnosis and the illness. When you first hear so many of these things, you immediately go to worst case scenario and you worry about your passing.
Right.
You worry about your mortality. So this is all very overwhelming emotionally. And again, being able to talk about that, being able to be expressive about it, helps us cope in a productive way.
Yes, exactly. With this being such a huge life, well, did it change your life, Gary? Was it life-changing?
It certainly was in the moment, and yes, it is life-changing. I am acutely aware of my mortality.
Okay.
Now, having had the surgery, I'm a good candidate to live a long life.
Right.
Okay? Without the surgery, I'm on edge. It could have been the widowmaker. But having said that, colors are deeper, smells are more rich. You do realize how fragile we are here, and even if I live to be 100, it's never enough. It's always limited.
Yes. Any other revelations that you had during this time? Anything?
Well, I want to say something about the service providers.
Yes.
And we know that here in Ontario and all of Canada, our service providers, our healthcare providers, are stretched thin, that there aren't enough to go around. My care was wonderful, but we always want to express our gratitude to them in the moment as well.
And I'm expressing my gratitude to you because we have to go to commercial break. We will be right back, more with Mental Health Matters when we return. Sorry about that. Welcome back to Mental Health Matters. I'm your host, Courtney Gedeon, and today we are talking about managing mental health during a life-challenging health diagnosis. I am so happy to bring back both of my guests, social worker Gary Derenfeld and Stephanie Leipold. Thank you so much for both being here today and sharing your stories. So Gary, you heard Stephanie's journey, her stories. Do you have any questions, thoughts, anything like that, now that you've been through a major health scare?
How's your health now?
Well, I just got diagnosed again on Tuesday. I have bone metastasis in my shoulder.
That's not a good outcome.
No.
How are you coping with that?
I'm pretty good with it. The first time it happened was January a year ago. And it was worse. Like, I felt worse because then it's impending doom, right? And then now I know it's coming, so you just make the best of it. And you live every day like it's your last day. You legitimately do.
I get that. I talk about relax into the mess. Just relax into the mess. And I find you transparent, all the things I talked about.
Yeah.
Transparent, authentic. I really like you.
Thank you. I like you too.
Just to say. And I don't know personally what you're going through, but I want to destigmatize and take this out of a mental health context and just a health and wellness perspective. That sadness, the fear, the ambiguity and uncertainty. That's your life right now.
Yeah. But you have to make the best of the little moments. Like, people are too busy making money, not memories. And that's the big downfall of most people.
Well, that's a good message to leave with a lot of folks. Make memories.
Yeah.
I really like that a lot. And I know that, Stephanie, from us talking in the past, you have been very open and transparent about what you're going through. Like Gary, on social media, you do post because there's a lot of people wondering how things are going.
Yeah.
But I'm interested to know, why was it important for you to come here today? And why is it important for you to share your story?
For people to know they're not alone, like especially women. I've had double mastectomies, so in the aspect of people looking at you, they look at you vastly different.
Right.
That it is okay. You have a support system. You're never alone. People are here for you.
Yeah.
And it's important for you to share your stories, and you can fight. It's not easy, but you can do it.
And you're doing amazing. You
Thank
really
you.
are. You're such a strong woman. I really admire you.
Thank you.
Gary, you are back practicing this fall. Is that correct?
I'm back to work, baby.
That makes me so happy to hear. I'm sure there's a lot of people who are excited about that. How are you feeling about getting back into work?
Well, I'm excited, and I've staged my return.
Okay.
So I've opened myself up to referrals for several weeks, and then I'm going to come back on a part-time basis. So, I'm mindful of my health, and I'm mindful of my limits, because I do have limits now.
Yes.
And so I want to be mindful of what I can do and how much I can do, and be protective of myself. We don't want to overextend, but we want to be doing what we can.
Right, exactly. So Stephanie, with everything coming up, you had mentioned that there's probably some radiation that you're going to have to go through again.
Yes.
How are you feeling about all that?
Well, I've done it before, twice. So
Yes.
I'm confident that it's going to work again, and then prolong my life for however long I'm allowed to. I guess not allowed, but graced to be here.
Yes. So let's talk about resiliency for a second. I think that's a real important topic, and I feel like you have a ton of resiliency. Somebody who gets knocked down and they get up again. How important, Gary, do you think resiliency is when we come to mental health and something like this?
It's huge. The capacity to overcome adversity, and if not overcome, at least cope with. Okay, and I don't know if you've overcome, but you certainly appear to be coping, at least now, which doesn't mean, by the way, that there aren't those moments when we sink into ourselves.
Right, and I think it's probably okay to have those moments too, isn't it?
Totally. We have to have permission to have our downs as well as our ups. We get to own whatever we're feeling when we're feeling it.
Right, exactly. Are you still going through ups and downs, Gary? Like, how are you?
I am. Prior to coming here this morning, I had a blood test to check my cholesterol. So it's an ongoing reminder.
Yes.
As we were talking earlier and reflecting on my journey, and I think about my wife, I can't help but tear up.
Right, yeah.
So I still, from time to time, lived the trauma of being in ICU post-surgery.
Yes.
And those events come back to me and can overwhelm me.
Right.
And like I said, I just own it. And if I'm tearing up, I'll say, well, I'm tearing up, but I'm okay.
Yes.
I think you are both such amazing people. I'm so glad I could have you both on and connect and meet each other and share your stories of struggles and triumphs. And we are wishing you nothing but the best, Stephanie. Thank you so much for watching Mental Health Matters. I'm your host, Courtney Gedeon. Until next time.